in no way should any country like Ukraine give up its territory if it was, attacked, unprovoked, attacked by a party like Russia. Look at the bad precedent that would set. Look at the signal that would give to other dictators from around the world. What is it okay to just come in and take territory? So it's a very, very tricky situation. And then one more thing is that whatever happens, whatever deals are made, there's going to have to be a credible guarantor, whether that's a guarantor of peace, whether that's Turkey or China or Saudi Arabia or a group of them, because if Russia does not honor its commitments and comes back in, they will be on the hook at the end of the day to defend Ukraine, and could be a great cost, not only financially but also boots on the ground as well. One final point, if I may, there's been a lot of research done on what the cost would be if Mr. Putin is not pushed back, and defense spending would increase exponentially for Western countries back to Cold War levels, and that's a figure a lot of Western countries just can't afford. So a lot of kind of factors to take into account here, balls in the air right now, but let's see what happens at this summit. I think it's actually a good thing that the Ukrainians and the Russians will be at the same table together potentially. At the beginning of the war, they actually were meeting in places like Turkey. So I think these contacts could be useful. Maybe they'll just produce more exchange of POWs, but maybe they'll also result in, for example, all of those Ukrainian children that were forcibly taken into Russia being returned as well.
And just finally, Michael, I mean, as a man of Ukrainian heritage who lives in Ukraine, who does a lot of traveling, you're currently on a tour where you've been to several different countries and you've seen both sides of the world on this one, New York, and also now you are, where are you now? You're in Bangkok, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is the one message that you think the world needs to have from someone like yourself about Ukraine? What would you like to get out there?
Well, let me put one factoid out there, a couple. The Ukrainian government has now documented no less than 140,000 cases of war crimes in Ukraine by the Russians. Recently, there were 16 Ukrainian POWs killed by the Russians while they were in Russian hands. That's the kind of people the Russians seem to be right now. Not seem to be, but actually are those that are in charge of this war from the Russian side. What's very hurtful for myself of Ukrainian heritage and a lot of Ukrainians is hundreds and hundreds of Ukrainian cultural sites, churches, museums, art museums have been destroyed or targeted by Russia. That's above and beyond maternity hospitals and children's hospitals. So it's very, very difficult for Ukrainians to be watching this up close. A lot of us feel that this is history repeating itself, that, in 32, 33, there was the Great Famine that was unleashed on Ukraine by Russia. There was the liquidation of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. There were countless dissidents from Ukraine deported to the Soviet Gulag. But yet, Ukrainians continue to fight. They know how important their independence, their sovereignty is, their ability to protect their own land, which they fought for so hard. But they also realize that Russia is a very, very aggressive state that won't stop. And we should also remember what Mr. Putin said a few months before the war in that rambling 5,000-word essay, is that he said Ukraine is part of Russia, we're the same people, and there's no way that the two nations can be apart. I'll end this answer, if I can, with a short video clip that was circulating for a few months now, and it was of a young boy, and he had witnessed some of the atrocities, the bombing that had happened in Bucha and elsewhere, churches targeted, things like that. And he was asked, well, look, aren't you afraid? Aren't you afraid of where things go? And he goes, no, because we're Ukrainians, we are fighters, and we are brave. And I think that goes for all Ukrainian people, whether they've remained in Ukraine or they're overseas right now, is that that's who they are inside. And they will continue to fight with or without Western support. But a lot of them, Kate, feel right now is that they're defending democracy, not only Ukrainian sovereignty, as a kind of buffer state between the West and Russia. And they can't scream loudly enough to say that, look, trust us, if we don't stop Mr. Putin right now, he will come further. So that's why we need your help as well.
Just in terms of the ground war at the moment, the think tank, the Institute for the Study of War, reports that the Russian military command has likely ordered significant tactical advances on the battlefield before poor weather conditions set in. And there's corresponding increase in the use of armoured vehicles in the Kharkiv and Pokrovsk directions. What can you tell us about their progress and their objectives?
It's really difficult to put the entire picture together because it is a very, very long front line, and you have different tactics and activities going on. And let's not forget, we also have a lot of elite Ukrainian troops and units on Russian territory right now in Kursk, manning that incursion. But what has happened recently, which should be of concern to everyone, is Russia has gained ground. Vuhledar, which sits quite high and is quite strategic, was recently overtaken by the Russians. Even though it cost them a lot in terms of men, and this is happening along the front line in terms of military vehicles, they continue to push on. Why? Because they have the numerical advantage. But what seems to not have happened, which gives Russia advantage along the front line, is that incursion into Kursk did not divert a lot of Russian manpower, from the front line, from Donetsk, for example. In fact, one study group says that after the Kursk incursion, the Russians have gained more ground in 2 months since 2022, which is astounding because, again, that was a big strategic objective of the Kursk incursion, to divert Russian resources from the front line.
And it's interesting, though, because even though you say it didn't divert great numbers of troops from the front line, the numbers of losses in terms of armoured vehicle and men are substantial along those parts of the front line, aren't they? And Russia seems at the moment to be able to sustain it. But the question is, how long will they be able to sustain that for?
Well, some analysts give Russia another year or two before it's going to be very difficult for them to sustain it. But having said that, if we're to believe Mr. Putin, Russia is on a military footing. It's transformed the economy into a war economy. And on top of that, we mustn't forget that it has a lot of bad actors helping it. Iran is now reported to be sending medium-range missiles to Russia. It has the assistance of North Korea. And, of course, Iran is also sending those very, very destructive drones to Russia. And we're also reading reports that in the background, China is supporting. You have China and India buying oil and other resources from Russia, which in turn helps to support its war economy, its war machine. So it's hard to say. One would have thought that by this point, given the number of Russian losses, you would have had a lot more Russian families, a lot more Russian mothers getting up and saying, enough is enough. We don't want our men either coming back in boxes or badly injured. But that doesn't seem to have happened yet. So to answer your question in a few words, then it looks like Russia can keep at this for quite some time, especially, by the way, without a solid domestic opposition and free media, too.
On the political front and the money front, good news for Ukraine in that the EU has got around any blockages by Hungary to give the go-ahead for 35 billion euros to be loaned to Ukraine using frozen Russian assets. What can you tell us about the terms of this deal and how the money will be used and when exactly?
Still in the works, but it's very, very good news. The EU leadership has worked very hard to get this done. Yes, you're right, referencing the frozen Russian assets. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually going to be the interest from these frozen Russian assets that are going to help repay this loan. The reason the principle isn't being used is because the EU or the money people in the EU feel that it will give the bloc a bad reputation, whatever that means. The other kind of aspect of this, which I don't think has been worked out yet, is for the US to come into this arrangement. It's also insisting that EU member states extend sanctions against Russia for a long, long time further. As you well know, and your listeners, the political landscape in Europe is shifting quite a bit right now. France, Germany, I think even in the UK, leaders there that are known to be very pro-Ukrainian aren't on a very solid political ground right now. And of course, very, very loud ticking in the background is the political clock in the United States. We're counting down the days to November, where if Mr. Trump does get in, he pledges to, quote unquote, end this war very quickly, maybe before even inauguration. And that would be a deal that would not be in Ukraine's favor.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio. My thanks to Louis Sykes, our producer. To support the work of Frontline, hit the subscribe button. You can also listen to Times Radio throughout the day or read it at times.co.uk. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.